Washington Post here this week, a headline read, Democrats prepare to move quickly to build case for Trump impeachment. And a little snippet from that article says, House Democrats said they will ramp up their impeachment effort next week against President Trump. And on Friday, the chairman of the three powerful House committees subpoenaed Secretary of State Mike Pompeo for documents related to their investigation into whether the president improperly pressured Ukraine's leader to investigate his political rivals. All right, it's very interesting that the Democrats, they can make stuff up and do all sorts of research on their political rivals, whether lawfully or unlawfully. But when Trump's trying to get to the bottom of somebody who's actually committed some crimes, now all of a sudden he's the bad guy trying to get dirt on his political rivals. I mean, have they ever stopped and considered whether or not he's just trying to get to the truth, whether or not he's just trying to root out corruption? I guess that's not important when it comes to the Democrats and the left. But and then you go through all these different fake news sites like Yahoo. They're all saying the same stuff, right? Trump confronted by threat like none he's faced. Unlike the Mueller report, much of the evidence in the growing Ukraine controversy that has fueled Democrats' impeachment inquiry is clearly in public view. I mean, there's headlines like this all over the place. I mean, it's nothing but the fake news media trying to get Trump again. And I like to think of it as the mainstream news media and the Democrat Party and the left and the globalist elite. They're like the Philistines, and Donald Trump is like a modern-day Samson. They keep trying everything they can to bind him, to stop him, but he keeps breaking free and turning the tables on him. And it's wonderful to see. So do I think anything's going to become of this? I don't. One reason I don't is because, just looking at the history, first it was his locker room talk that they thought had him, right? Then it was Russian collusion. Then it's his mean-spirited tweets. You name it. They keep thinking that they have him. Oh, we finally got him now. We finally got him now. And then he ends up coming out on top victorious. And a large part of that is because the American people are beginning to see how hypocritical the mainstream news media, the left and the Democratic Party are. And it's like, well, so what? What are you doing? Even if some of these things were true, we're thinking, so what? What you're doing is 10 times worse than what he supposedly did. Because I think nothing will come of this, does this mean I'm saying that Donald Trump's going to for sure win the next election? I'm not saying that he will. I don't know what will happen. But I do know this. If he does lose, or if they do end up in being able to impeach him, I believe the story's going to play out much like it did with Samson back in the Old Testament, where when Samson went down, he took the whole house of the Philistines down with him. Trump's not going to go down now. It's too late. He's never going to go down without a fight to totally try to expose them and take them down. He's gone too far. He cannot back off because they will go after him relentless now. So he's in the game until the end. And I think there are so many parallels. We've talked about this before in other studies. I think there are so many parallels between Donald Trump and Samson of the Bible. And I'm just going to bring up a few real quickly here through the scriptures. Judges chapter 14 verse 4 reads, "But his father and his mother," Samson's father and mother, "knew not that it was of the Lord that he sought an occasion against the Philistines. For at that time the Philistines had dominion over Israel." Now, so Samson went and married a pagan Philistine woman. And his mother and father were very upset about that. Naturally so, right? Why would he do that? He's supposed to marry a godly woman. So Samson does that. When Samson does that, I mean, it seems like a very bad thing. It's a horrible thing, and looks bad upon his character for doing so. But what his mother and father didn't know, it was of the Lord. What does that mean? God was actually orchestrated so that Samson would marry this pagan woman. This is a very unconventional method that Christians don't like to accept today. They just say, well, that was the Old Testament, never happens anymore. Yes, it does. God doesn't change when it comes to how he moves in the world today and how he moves nations and peoples and so forth. But why did God do it? He wanted to seek an occasion against the Philistines. In other words, God was trying to embed Samson with the Philistines so that Samson would then destroy the Philistines. God was setting a trap for the Philistines. And I think of it like today, you think of Donald Trump, he was basically in bed with the globalist elite. He knew all of them, did all of his business dealings with them. In all practical purposes, we could say he was in bed with the Philistine woman, Mystery Babylon, even, if you wanted to say. He was there. But now he's working against them, which is interesting, just like Samson was. An everyday Israelite would look at Samson with disdain. They would say, that guy married a Philistine woman. Why would he do that? And then when Samson would start delivering the Israelites by defeating the Philistines, I would guess that many of the Israelites still were against it, thinking, that's not a godly man. He's married to a pagan woman, and he's done so many, uncouth things, so to speak. All right, so I'm going to jump over to Judges 15, verse 4. And I'm going to read like 9 or 10 verses from this chapter. And Samson went and caught 300 foxes and took firebrands and turned tail to tail and put a firebrand in the midst between two tails. Okay, so this is, Samson's, his first wife. He has another wife later on, Delilah. But his first wife was unnamed. She was, like I said, she was a pagan Philistine woman. And he got into an argument with her, and he left for a period. And then he came back, and her father gave her away to another man. And Samson's very upset about this, that his wife's father gave her away. And so he takes these foxes, and basically he puts little firebrands on their tails, and he's going to punish the Philistines for what the Philistine father did to him. Verse 5, and when he had set the brands on fire, he let them go into the standing corn of the Philistines and burnt up both the shocks and also the standing corn with the vineyards and the olives. Okay, so this was very devastating to the Philistines. I mean, Samson just burned up a bunch of their crops, a bunch of their corn, and their vineyards even. And so now someone would say, well, that's not a very nice thing not a nice, gentle Christian thing to do, and people say the same about Donald Trump today. Well, he's not a very nice Christian man, he's not, sitting up there talking soft like a lot of our pastors do up here at the pulpit, He's not singing "Jesus loves you, yes I know." He's burning up the Philistines' produce there. And you think about that is what Donald Trump has been doing to the modern day Philistines today, to the globalist elite. He's been burning down everything that they've been building. And that's why they're attacking him. And that's why the Philistines are going to be so upset with Samson, because he was hurting, he was threatening their power and hurting and laying some hurt to them. So verse 6, then the Philistines said, who hath done this? And they answered, Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he hath taken his wife and given her to his companion. And the Philistines came up and burnt her and her father with fire. So the Philistines now were mad at his wife that was given away and her father for fueling Samson's rage, okay? But this isn't going to really work for Samson. Verse 7, and Samson said unto them, though you have done this, though you tried to right a wrong, yet I will be avenged of you, and after that I will cease. So Samson, you could see, was a very vindictive man. He said, hey, I know you tried to make things right, but I'm still going to punish you for what you did. And, you hear of Donald Trump's character. He always fights back. If somebody punches him, he's going to punch him back 10 times harder. That's the way Samson was. And if you look in the prior chapter, I believe it's Judges chapter 14, there's a verse in there that actually says basically that Samson will fight back. Anybody who punches him, he's going to punch him back. I can't remember the exact wording there, but you'll find that in Judges 14. Way too many parallels to ignore here. And I'm going to stop for a second. I believe that God is actually, it's not that Donald Trump's a great man or that we deserve a president that will fight like he has been. It's that God was judging the Philistines because of their evil, because of their pride and their arrogance. You think about the globalist elite and the Democrat Party and the leftists, how arrogant they've gotten these last years. So I believe this Donald Trump is judgment sent upon them specifically. And also to give us a little bit of a reprieve, to give Christians in our nation a reprieve. But I guess why I'm quoting some of this is I don't expect it to end good with Donald Trump as far as him personally. I think eventually he may go down like Samson, but it'll be a good thing for us. May not be so good for him. All right, verse 8. Now check out what he does. And he smote them hip and thigh. This is the Spirit of the Lord came upon him to do this, actually. By the way, I skipped that for brevity here. And he smote them hip and thigh with a great slaughter and went down and dwelt in the top of the rock Etam. Now, a lot of kids like superheroes. But this is actually the only real superhero in the Bible, Samson. I mean, he did have superhuman strength and superhuman powers, and he's just whooping on these guys. Hip and thigh, okay? Verse 9, then the Philistines went up and pitched in Judah and spread themselves in Lehi. And the men of Judah said, why are you come up against us? And they answered, to bind Samson are we come up, to do to him as he hath done to us. Okay, so the Philistines now are talking to the children of Judah here, the leaders of Judah, and they're trying to get them to turn Samson in. Now today, this has been happening all the time. Philistines, you could put Democrat Party, left globalists. Judah, the Republican Party. Hey, can you just deliver us that guy? He's causing us a lot of trouble. We won't hurt you, we promise. But we just want Samson. Think about how often we hear that today. That they just want to take Trump down and they'll be nice to us. Baloney. They would never be nice to us. They just want to take down the fighter here, the one that's giving them all kinds of trouble. Verse 11. Then 3,000 men of Judah went to the top of the rock Etam and said to Samson, knowest thou not that the Philistines are rulers over us? That's such a cowardly statement. Think about that. Think of how many cowardly politicians we have today that say, don't you know we can't do anything about the deep state? We can't fight against the fake news media. They are rulers over us. We just have to play ball with them and just get along. Otherwise, it's going to be hard times for us. That's what the children of Judah are saying is, hey, you're going too strong here. You just need to calm down. What is this that thou hast done unto us? And he said unto them, as they did unto me. Now check this out. This is actually, I think, the verse that I was talking about. I think it's right here. As they did unto me, so have I done unto them. That's basically almost a word-for-word statement of what we've heard Donald Trump say sometimes. He won't necessarily go after people who haven't attacked him, but once they do, he gives it back to them. Again, did God not choose Samson? I mean, this is an anti-biblical statement, right? Pretty much is an anti-biblical statement in some senses, depending on how you're doing it. As they did unto me, so have I done unto them. But not when God is using somebody like Samson to bring judgment upon somebody. Now, in our personal life, we don't want to take Samson's example and be vindictive against anybody who wrongs us. That's not our calling. But this was Samson's calling, okay? And it was God's doing. Remember, it was God behind the whole thing. He sought an occasion against the Philistines. Verse 12, and they said unto him, we are come down to bind thee, that we may deliver thee into the hand of the Philistines. And Samson, this would be like, we're having impeachment proceedings going on here. And, you Republicans, you just need to vote with us and bind Trumpson for us. All right? Just as long as we should send Donald Trump an email or call him up and say, just whatever you do, do not let them cut your hair, and you'll be fine. All right. And Samson said unto them, swear unto me that you will not fall upon me yourselves. Okay. He says, okay, you can bind me, but you got to promise me you're not going to kill me. You'll let the Philistines do that. Verse 13, and they spake unto him, saying, no, but we will bind thee fast and deliver thee into their hand, but surely we will not kill thee. And they bound him with 2 new cords and brought him up from the rock. Okay, he's taken captive. He's being delivered up here. Verse 14, and when he came unto Lehi, the Philistines shouted against him. You think about how they are. They're so mad today. Every time I look at the news, whether I'm, it could be a commercial during some broadcast I'm watching or something, there's something against Donald Trump. It's crazy. The Spirit of the Lord, now check this out. The Philistines shouted against him, and now what's the result of the Philistines being emboldened here? Then, it says, and the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and the cords that were upon his arms became as flax that was burnt with fire, and his bands were loosed from his hands. So God's Spirit came into Samson or upon him, and it's just like those strong cords that were binding him were just like they just burnt right off of him. That's why I said he's like a real biblical superhero. Not like Batman or Superman or something like this. This is actually a real superhero. Empowered by God. Verse 15. And he found a new jawbone of an ass and put forth his hand and took it and slew 1,000 men therewith. Okay? Just a jawbone of an ass, and the Spirit of God came upon him. He ripped the cords off and just bam, bam, just smoting everybody, These kinds of verses probably, we can't read these in most of our churches today because this is too violent. We're in the new covenant now, and we don't talk about those old terrible things that happened way back then. Even though it was God's Spirit that was moving him to do this. 16, and Samson said, with the jawbone of an ass, heaps upon heaps, with the jaw of an ass have I slain 1,000 men. So he's even boasting about it. So you can see, Donald Trump sometimes will boast about it, but he's boasting about it in a way to really get under their skin. And it's only going to make it worse because his boasting now is going to make them be obsessed with trying to bind him. And the story basically goes, well, let me read a few more verses. I'll go back here. I don't want to spoil it. The story basically goes that they keep binding him over and over and over again, and he keeps breaking loose and defeating them. But it does end with him finally becoming bound because of Delilah, his second wife, who was also a Philistine woman, convinced him to finally tell her what the source of his strength was. And the source of his strength was that he was under the vow of a Nazirite, and it's in the Old Testament, in the book of Numbers. There was a special vow that somebody could take, and they had to let their hair grow while they were under that vow. And God gave him special powers during that time. And once his hair was cut, then he was released from that vow, and he no longer had God's protection. And then they bound him, poked out his eyes, and thought that they had victory. But check this out. This is how it all ends. Skipping on to Judges 16, verse 29. And Samson took hold of 2 middle pillars upon which the house stood, and which it was borne up. Okay, the house, this is like, you think of this as like the Capitol building of the political elite, okay? Which was borne up, this was of the Philistines back here. Of the one with his right hand and the other with his left. So he's standing between those pillars. And Samson said, verse 30, and Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. Now, I want you to remember that. Let me die with the Philistines. We could see that play out politically here in the coming years with Donald Trump. And he bowed himself with all his might, and the house fell upon the lords and upon all the people that were therein. So the dead which he slew at his death were more than they which he slew in his life. So you could look at it, some people get really concerned, Donald Trump's the first president that's actually fighting for us, he's getting victories, and now he's going to lose if all this happens. I don't think so. I think do I know for sure if this doesn't play out like this? Hey, it doesn't play out like this. I'm not declaring that. I'm not trying to say I'm a prophet and this is going to come to pass, okay? But I've seen too many parallels to ignore between these two characters, and God many times, when you're looking at prophecies, He uses parallels and types and examples, and many times they play out very closely with what has happened before. So think about that. He killed more Philistines than he did at his death than he did during his lifetime. If Donald Trump went down, it's possible that he would pull more of the deep state actors, the corrupt politicians that have been harming in America, that have been lying to us, deceiving us, and using us. It's possible that he could pull more of those people out into the light than he is already at this time. In fact, it makes more sense that he would, because if he knew he was going down, he's not holding anything back. He's probably got a lot of dirt on a lot of those people already, and is playing his cards wisely, one step at a time. Anyways, questions or comments? I know that was like a full study already, but I had to do it because it's so relevant. Yep, 21 minutes. You're my timekeeper. Any input?
Yeah. It seems to me the Democrats won't let go of their anger since Hillary didn't win. And I mean, how long is this going to go on? I mean, they won't let go.
No.
And then it reminds me also of the wound, the deadly wound, if they impeach him and he comes back. And that there's a couple scenarios that I'm in my head that might happen. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Just those two things mostly. I mean, you go on Facebook and these people are they're vicious. They hate that they could push her button and she would obey and do whatever the elite wants, but he don't.
Hillary would have, right? Yeah.
But they are ticked off because they can't push his buttons, you know?
Right.
And the anger is unbelievable.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because the Philistines could push the leaders of Judah. They could tell them what to do, but not Samson. Right. There's just another parallel there that you just brought up.
What did you watch yesterday, John? Remember that they were talking about the media and stuff?
Why, did it make me mad?
No, well, yeah, but I can't think of the word they used. What's happening to our country, I can't think of the name. It was really interesting as I was just listening to what it was about how bad the media is and the things, they're planning these things through the media, to get to the people.
Right.
And it was a certain, I can't think of the word, but it's actually a plan.
Oh.
I wish that.
I mean, the secrets the government has.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the word that you're thinking of. It's
indoctrinating them through.
Well, it's this guy he was listening to, and he was saying that this certain thing is what's going on right now, and not lenders. Oh my word! It was so good. Why didn't I write it down?
Yeah.
When you get old, you just forget things.
Wait till you get my age. Anyway.
But anyway, it was really interesting because it's all a plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is very orchestrated plan they're trying to carry out.
Can you imagine all the secrets that he hasn't let loose? I mean,
right.
Trump, whatever president gets in, knows a lot more than.
Right.
There are things that we'll never know.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if he was impeached, they got to be a little bit afraid then too. I'll tell you, they might as well kill him because there's a lot of things he could spoil a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, and that like I was saying, I think if Samson ended like that, I could see Trump ending like that.
Yeah. He knows too much.
Christian Overcomers is brought to you by the tithes and offerings of our listeners. If you would like to support our ministry, please go to ChristianOvercomers.com. God bless you. And thank you for your support.
Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He has loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible sword. His truth is marching on.